Hello and welcome to The Week in Golf. I'm your host, Rod Morri. The Week in Golf is brought to you by iSeekGolf.com and GolfLink. Episode 2 comes to you today from the Australian Golf Club in Sydney, where American superstar Jordan Spieth took out the Stonehaven Cup today. After the tournament, I caught up with iSeekGolf.com analyst Bruce Young to get his thoughts on what unfolded. Well, the fans turned out at the Australian Golf Club today, and what a show they were treated to by the 21-year-old American Jordan Spieth, romping to victory in the Australian Open. And I'm joined by Bruce Young from iSeekGolf.com. And Bruce, boy, that was something to watch, was it not?
Well, I don't know whether it's the greatest round ever produced in Australian golf. I guess we'll determine that over a period of time, but it'll have to be up there, that's for sure, with the likes of Ernie Els' round of 60 at Royal Melbourne and maybe Retief Houston's round at Lake Karrinyup a few years ago. But given the circumstances and the demanding conditions here at the Australian Golf Club over the weekend, this round of 63 today was one of the great rounds of golf, I think, just generally.
Yeah. It was the round we were hoping to see from Rory McIlroy to make things interesting. It didn't come from, in fact, it didn't come from anybody. The most impressive thing about this was the scoring average today must have been well over 70.
Oh, I would think so. Those conditions today were very similar to what they were yesterday when the wind kicked in at about 12 o'clock, at that northeasterly wind, and it was very strong and made the golf course very, very difficult. So what he produced was something out of the box, and he can take away from this not only the victory, but the manner in which he achieved the victory, and he talked quite a bit about that afterwards.
I salvaged every stroke possible today. There was nothing that I left out there, and that's very rare to find. You know, there was at no point was I, even remotely upset. Which is it was very stress-free. Take a lot of confidence from that, knowing that this course was that challenging for everybody, including world number 1 and world number 3. It was difficult, so yeah, I can take a lot from beating the whole world-class field, not those two guys included, but the entire field was you could scroll down the names, and most of them were faces I see on a regular basis on the PGA Tour.
Look, we get spoiled by the younger players in this day and age, don't we? Jordan Spieth's career has been truly remarkable to this point, and this only puts an exclamation mark on that.
Yeah, interestingly enough, it's only his second win. We know that he's had a number of good finishes on the PGA Tour. He won the John Deere Classic last year and had a couple of runner-up finishes this year. Not too bad. The tournaments, though, Rod, at the Tournament of Champions, at the start of the year, and at the Masters in April, he finished runner-up on debut there. So that just tells the quality of the player. And I think the fact that he said earlier this week that he likes to bring his game internationally now, he wants to play a lot internationally, I think he's been rewarded with a significant international title, and good luck to him for that.
He was genuinely chuffed to be holding the Stonehaven Cup. You could tell that in the press conference. He sat in that very chair not an hour ago, Bruce, and it was fabulous to see. Spieth's performance was fantastic. The crowds really adopted him. Of course, Adam Scott is the local favourite, but you could sort of feel the crowds cheering Jordan Spieth all the way home once it was clear that Adam Scott wasn't going to be.
I think that's a very good point. Once it was clear that McIlroy and Scott weren't going to be contenders for the title, they really did get behind Jordan Spieth. And some of the comments that he's made this week have really endeared him to the Australian golfing public, and you could feel that out there today. They really got behind him as he really just put together that extraordinary finish over the closing few holes.
Yep, he plays the game the right way, he shapes the ball, he gets on with it and plays quickly. It's unorthodox, but it's fantastic to watch, and he shoots the scores. Jordan Spieth was obviously the story of the day, winning the Stonehaven Cup, Bruce Young, but of course not the only story. Rod Pampling, Brett Rumford, Greg Chalmers all going to the Open Championship at St Andrews in 2015.
And look, when you consider the years that they've had, Rumford had a great year last year, not a good year this year. Pampling and Chalmers have struggled on the PGA Tour. Just to get the opportunity through final qualifying for the Open Championship via this tournament is a huge boost for their careers. They'll get to go to St Andrews next year, and it's a great initiative by the R&A to bring that qualifying to this championship, and they've reaped the rewards, or reaped the benefits of that.
Players tested under tournament pressure probably deserve a spot more than those who used to play in the qualifier. I think that was the whole idea of
I think so too, yes.
Yeah, and a significant national championship. The past two players I wanted to talk about, Bruce, of course, neither Adam Scott nor Rory McIlroy won. At the start of the week, it's what we wanted. On Saturday night, we still had a chance to perhaps see that. They both gave it all, both came up short. Just some thoughts on Adam and Rory's weeks.
Well, I don't think you can say Adam finished fifth I think,
today,
fifth it was. So it was a good solid week for him. I suppose our expectations of him now are so high that we are hoping that he'd win just about every time he plays in Australia, and he's done that, really.
Because he did last year.
Well, he did last year, and he did again last week at the Masters. He so nearly won. But so another good solid week from Adam Scott. Rory McIlroy was disappointing, I suppose, but he really took himself out of that tournament with that rather bizarre couple of holes in the middle of round 3. So great to have him here, though, all the same. The world number 1. He's a gregarious, outgoing sort of character that people warm to, and he brought a lot to the tournament. He was obviously paid a lot of money to be here, but I think he really gave plenty of bang for his buck, as indeed did Jordan Spieth and Adam Scott, who were both no doubt paid significant amounts of money to play the event.
Yep, they can get paid plenty of money in lots of places, though.
Absolutely.
I get the feeling McIlroy genuinely enjoys his time here in Australia and had a good time this week as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one thing I do want to say, Rod, before we go, the winning margin today, 6 shots, is the greatest winning margin at the Australian Open since Greg Norman's victory in 1996 over Wayne Grady here at the Australian Golf Club. So once again, just another indication of the quality of Jordan Spieth's golf this weekend.
Yeah, and what a terrific win that was from Jordan Spieth. Now, important golf championships come in all shapes and sizes, and one of the biggest in New South Wales was played out recently in Nyngan. The New South Wales Sand Greens Championships are the biggest event west of the Great Dividing Range, and GolfLink took the 6-hour drive to Nyngan this year to see what golf in the bush is all about. It might not be the Australian Open, but for these blokes, the Sand Greens Championships are just as important. 104 golfers have come from all over the state to compete here at Nyngan Golf Club.
Sand Greens is, you know, for a lot of these players, it's the number 1 event that they strive to. I was going to say strive to win, but it's probably more strive to participate in every year. We've got the 4-ball championship that's played in March every year, and then later in the year we have the singles, and you know, these guys just love it.
And you meet some of the greatest guys you'll ever meet. It's a great, how do you put it?
Camaraderie.
Camaraderie.
I think we've got about 30 to 40 players that are all off handicaps of 4 or 5 or better. You know, we've got a fellow off scratch, a couple off scratch out there. So yeah, you're quite right. Although it's a fun event, there's plenty of serious golf out there as well. About a third of the golf clubs in New South Wales have sand greens, and that's primarily, it's a cost factor. Being able to maintain grass greens is a very expensive thing, as well as having to be able to irrigate them constantly.
But this unwieldy looking implement here, what's it called and how does it work?
Depending on what side of the track you come from, it's a smoother or a scraper.
Right.
And it's used for smoothing out foot marks, rake marks on a sand green, an oil sand green, and most sand greens these days either use sump oil or canola oil. Right. Sometimes gear oil out of machinery. As you can see, it's got a rake at the front of it and then the smoother at the back. And once you've moved onto the green and smooth, raked and then smoothed, you putt along the line. You can only have 2 smooths. The first one can go from the hole to the ball.
Right.
But the last one should go from the ball back to the hole. The smoother has never been patented.
Right.
So they come in different widths, different lengths, different shapes and different sizes.
For those of us who play on grass, it's a totally different game, isn't it? You don't fly anything onto the green, everything's got to be 60 yards. It's very old school, real ground game.
Absolutely. No, I mean, the ability to keep it on the ground, you know, very, very important. It's probably why I'm here administering the game, not out there playing, because I can't do it.
I came from Queensland, but originally I came from Indonesia. Yes, I'm the only Indonesian at the moment. I'm the only Asian.
And all sand greens is a different sort of game. I was watching it there, how it's played. It's not like what you see on TV, is it?
Yeah, it's a lot more awkward, and all different courses. Some have dirt, some have grass around them.
But I lost a nephew last year when we went to Barabara, so I know if you're up there listening, this one's for you. Thank you.
I actually think it's a family, like it's a golfing family now. You come here on a Friday afternoon before anywhere in New South Wales, and you shake 30 hands as soon as you walk in the door. How you going and what are you doing? And they're from all over the New South Wales, all over the state. I'm really happy that New South Wales keep putting it in, and like I said, going to these little clubs and making profitable for the whole weekend. Really good of New South Wales to still support the western areas and places like that where golf is struggling a bit.
It's a real boon for the club to host the event. I know it moves around the state, but it's very much sought after, isn't it, by the clubs themselves?
Oh, look, absolutely. You know, again, it's one of those things that you know, these little towns, if they can get an event like that here, you know, it's a great thing for the club. These clubs are run primarily on voluntary labour, so yeah, a few extra dollars in the can very much help.
The 2014 Sand Greens Championships have been run and won, but even if you play your golf on grass and you're looking for something different, this could be the event for you. And I can vouch for the fact that the Sand Greens Championships are about as much fun as golf can be. Now, for many people, it's time that's the biggest impediment to getting out on the golf course as much as they'd like, but you don't need to play golf to scratch that golfing itch, as Melbourne golfer Chris Chapman showed us when we visited his home workshop recently. So we're here with a prolific do-it-yourselfer, Chris Chapman, in kindly invited us to Ormond. Thanks very much. Chris, we're in your little workshop here, but how long have you been at it? When did you get started?
I suppose it's probably 6 to 7 years now. 44, feel every bit of it some days. Married, 3 kids. I'm in the IT profession. Probably the catalyst to me starting to do the stuff for myself was starting a family and not having as much time to get out on the course as I'd like. So to compensate, I started to fit out this really well spaced shed, I suppose, with the gear, and I'd experiment, and over a period of time, I suppose, I built up some skills and people come around and I'd fit their clubs for them.
I'll get you to show us some of the basic stuff you've got around here, Chris, and maybe what you'd recommend for a beginner. And I think most people probably want to maybe change their own grips, maybe change some shafts.
Absolutely.
What do you need? How much do you need to invest?
So I didn't go and spend thousands of dollars on the gear straight up. I sort of built it up over a period of time, as you said. And I think some base gear that you'd want is to get yourself a small collection of ferrules, I suppose, and some grips. So this machine in particular is manufactured in Melbourne.
This is a loft and lie machine,
is that
right?
This one is certainly more accurate. People get very, very particular about the lie and loft of their clubs, particularly the lie. So I adjusted a set of left-handers.
That's actually pretty important, isn't it? The lie angle of the clubs is fairly important to how you actually play the game.
I think people really underestimate it. I think getting a lie board and marking up your clubs and actually seeing what the club is doing when it's hitting the ground is super important, and I think people probably get a little despondent with their equipment when it can probably really change their game by just having a look at what the lie angles look like. So this is a CPM machine, Rod, and basically this tests the stiffness of a shaft. So the higher the CPM count, the more stiff the shaft. Right. So this is showing 298, which would be an extremely stiff shaft. Some of the other non-negotiables, in my view, a compressor, and this has got the DG10, which I understand stands for damn good, but this is from the States, and it's got a little brass cap on it where the butt end of the grip is secured, and it allows you to push it on the golf club once you're gripping, and also gives you a bit of leverage when you're removing them as well. I think that is an absolute non-negotiable considering the cost of compressors these days, and it's a multi-purpose tool as well. And probably the final two, I think, certainly a club ruler. These things are imperative. This one in particular from Golfworks gives you some of the numbers that you need across there, but I think for the most part they're standard. But this is a shaft tip guide, so if you don't know how big the tip of a particular club is, all you do is slot it in there and it'll tell you whether it's a 370, 355, 335, whatever the case may be. So this is really important both for iron shafts and for drivers, hybrids, fairways, because they're not all the same. This is a shaft puller that I built. It took me quite a while to come up with this. Now I think this is a non-negotiable, particularly if you want to get into a little more than just pulling grips off and just removing iron heads from shafts. The secret to pulling off the head of a driver with a graphite shaft in it, or a fairway wood, or a hybrid for that matter, is that it needs to be pulled in line. So that the idea of the bottle jack with the shaft guide on it allows the club to come up, and there's a little guide here that can fit a 335 tip shaft or a 350 tip shaft. The head does come up in line. So basically you just pump the jack, the guide clamps onto the hosel of the driver. Now I haven't heated this one up, but fundamentally, once it gets heated up using the heat gun around the hosel and around the face of the club to free up and loosen the epoxy, you'll go bang and it'll come off in about a minute. I'm the sort of person who'd like to have a go at something, I think within reason, to see if I can do it. I think I know my limits, and as I get older, I know my limits a little more than I think. Usually I'm out here one night a week, and then if I have some things that need to be done for clients who want to play on the weekend or something, then I'll make time available to fit clubs and pull shafts and do whatever the case.
And does this, you obviously enjoy it,
I
does this
do,
in some ways not replace golf, but this is a hobby you can pursue at night time. When you've got 3 kids and working, golf's not always easy to get out and play.
And you're spot on. It certainly doesn't replace golf, but it's a better alternative than nothing at all.
And if that doesn't make you want to go out in the shed and tinker, perhaps nothing will. Finally this week, GolfLink's Race to Bonneville has been a huge success this season. 8 events run, all sold out, but there's still plenty more to go, and December is Caddy Challenge month. We caught up with Caddy Challenge CEO Craig Connolly to explain how you can be a part of it.
Caddy Challenge is really pleased to be partnering with the GolfLink Race Series this year. We think Caddy Challenge and GolfLink are a perfect fit. Caddy Challenge is about challenging golfers to play to their best, participate but score at the same time. And the Race Series is clearly about golfers participating but also doing so in a competitive environment. All a golf club member has to do to join Caddy Challenge is log on to caddychallenge.com.au, register your details, deposit some money, accept your first challenge and go off and play in a competition round of golf. If you shoot 34 points or better, you'll win. caddychallenge.com.au is the place to register.
And that wraps it up for episode 2 of The Week in Golf. We look forward to your company again next week.